Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. This is Mary Davidson, one of your co-hosts, and I am joined by Logan Clements, our other co-host. And today we have an exciting episode. We are going to be chatting all about micro weddings with our wonderful guest who Logan is going to introduce. So I'm going to pass it on over to Logan.
Yeah, Mary, I keep joking. Maybe we need to have another adjective we use to describe our episodes, because I feel like we always say we're excited. But it's a good problem to have that we get so excited about our content. But yes, I'm so thrilled. There's a different word. Thrilled to introduce our guest for today, Gretchen Culver. She is the creative mind behind Minneapolis's go-to design and planning firm, Rocket Science Events. But her business prowess doesn't stop there. In 2020, she opened the doors to Microweddings, a brand that provides stylish and affordable micro weddings as a way to meet her clients' evolving demands for small but significant celebrations. Her knack for identifying client pain points and solving problems has propelled Microweddings to the top of her market. Her affinity with empowering female entrepreneurs, which we love, led her to launch Culver Creative, where she provides coaching and consulting services for creative professionals. She also serves as a Sage coach for Be Sage Consulting, with a special focus on small weddings as a sustainable revenue stream. And in addition, Gretchen co-founded the Small Wedding Society. Named one of the 30 under 40 to watch by Special Events, one of the Biz Bash 500 most influential event pros, and recognized as a top planner by Brides and Martha Stewart Weddings, Gretchen's award-winning work has been featured in magazines, online, and on television. Whew, Gretchen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. That's some intro. I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, is there anything else you'd want to add to that lovely introduction that you want to share with our listeners?
I mean, what could I possibly add to that? Maybe I've got a couple of kids, I've got a husband, I got a dog.
Love it. I'm an animal lover, so always shout out to the animals in the room. So perfect. Well, Gretchen, we kind of do like a quick little why we asked you type thing, just for our listeners to set some context. So as Logan said, we're thrilled to have you here. And for this episode, so many of our episodes aren't really like specifically wedding focused, but for this one, we thought it would be a wonderful topic, and we want to dive deep into it for micro weddings. And not just because, it's been something that's been super relevant lately. It's been something that has been part of the COVID process as far as weddings and events. So we're excited to learn about that. But additionally, I love the aspect of the rocket science events, and also how you call your planners event scientists. I just have to call that out real quick. I think it just like works perfectly together, and I love that. So shout out to that. Excited to learn more about all of those good things. So thank you again, and we'll just get right into it. And we always like to start very basic, just to kind of set the stage. So my first question for you is, what is a micro wedding?
A micro wedding, the definition varies depending on who you talk to. I think it's such a new concept that publications and companies and event professionals are still working to kind of define what's a small wedding, an intimate wedding, a micro wedding, that sort of thing. But the definition that I think is becoming the most standard or accepted is that a micro wedding is a wedding of around 30-ish people, and it's a much shorter time frame. So it's going to be condensed or distilled all the things of a traditional wedding into anywhere from a 90-minute to 3-hour experience. So for a micro wedding, small guest count, condensed timeline, those are, I think, the two big takeaways when you're thinking about what that means.
I know the micro weddings was a trend that we talked about, came out because of COVID, but something that as an event pro gets me excited, because I think it inspires couples to reconnect with like their why of why they're even having a wedding and having it as an option moving forward. But what are some of the benefits that you've seen in your experience for offering micro weddings, especially in the year of in light of the last year and a half, but also looking forward to the future?
Yeah. So obviously the pandemic changed everything for us event pros. I mean, everyone was affected. And with my company, Rocket Science, we do high production, larger guest count weddings, and those stopped. But what I had been seeing with my Rocket Science clients is that there was a shift in the type of wedding they wanted to have. They were less interested in tradition. Their guest counts were shrinking, and they were more excited about creating a specific experience, like really doing something unique and personal that their guests would really, be wowed by. And so even pre-pandemic, I was thinking, okay, how do you, like, these smaller weddings seem to be a thing. Like, how do you do this and still remain profitable, right? Because for me as a planner, I charge a percentage. So if our guest count is shrinking, more often than not, the budget is shrinking as well. And so it's like there's a lot of time and energy still put into these weddings, even though they're small. So anyway, that's kind of like in the back of my head. And then the pandemic hit. And so then I thought, okay, well, let's see if we can really make this small wedding thing work. And so I learned of a woman in Birmingham who was doing micro weddings, and she had been doing them for a few years, actually pre-pandemic. And her unique take on it was to do multiple micro weddings in one day. So 4 to 5 couples come in and they get married, and they're using the same venue, the same rentals, the same backdrop, and they're having a mini wedding experience, and then they're moving on with their day. So I was able to connect with her and learn from her and kind of take what she was finding to be successful in her market. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to give it a try. Like, what else do I have to lose? It's a pandemic. Like, I don't have anything else going on. So that's kind of where mini weddings was born, was this idea to like make this multiple micro weddings on one day concept work in Minnesota. So mini, MINNE, is a play on Minnesota. So we launched in April, and then our first dates were in August. And I was expecting a lot of couples to be interested in it as like a COVID substitute, like they couldn't have their big wedding. But then what was happening, it was all these people who were wanting a small wedding anyway. Like, we weren't going to get married, but now we are. Like, this is such a great idea. I never wanted to invite my weird Uncle Jerry, and so now I don't have to. And so they just kind of exploded. And I really quickly understood that it was a market of consumers that no one was speaking to. So no one was even addressing the small wedding consumer, and they're different than my Rocket Science clients. They're completely different. So it was like a light bulb moment. And I was like, okay, this is not going to be just a trend. This is going to be here to stay, because people are wanting this, and the pandemic has now made it an available option for them. And so that's so exciting to me. I love the word exciting too, so I'm going to say exciting too. But yeah, so I'm so excited about it and about where it's going and how it's evolving over the past, couple of years.
I love this because it's just like another example of, obviously that our industry was hit really hard during the pandemic, but this is one of those things that is so cool that it began, and then that you were able to kind of jump on board with it, and then it's most likely going to be a thing of the future, right, as well. And so that is something good, right, that came out of it. And I think it's just really great that it's been a positive experience for you with micro weddings, and excited to see what comes in the future for that. But so another question for you, you hinted a bit on these, but just diving in a little bit deeper to it, what are some common misconceptions about micro weddings? Because I think we have, an idea of what we think they are, and you kind of hinted at some of them, because they can still be, this like amazing wedding experience. It's not like necessarily going and like eloping, right? That's, I feel like, what a lot of people associate it with. So if you could speak more to that.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of people think a small wedding or a micro wedding is cheap, and like they have to be sacrificing something, and is kind of just a budget option. I think that is definitely, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, I would say like that was a misconception or a stereotype of a micro wedding. But that the opposite, I mean, that's not true at all. Like all of like the mini weddings that we do, like, we're really focusing on having like a really killer ceremony backdrop and, nice design, and they get a digital invitation, and they're getting, because the way that it's structured is we're doing multiple weddings on one day. So, those couples basically are getting a wedding that they couldn't afford otherwise, right? So it's like they're getting great world-class vendors that, if they were to book them on their own, would charge more than their entire like wedding package that they're getting through us. And so like they're not sacrificing anything. In fact, they're getting more from their package, and from their wedding experience than they would if they tried to do it on their own. And so I think that there's really like, now that Instagram, social media, the publications, industry publications are showing more micro weddings, I think those kind of misconceptions are going away, and people are attending them, and they're realizing that, you know what, like a 90-minute wedding is still pretty fun. You've got your ceremony, you got some cake, you got some champagne, and then like you're on with your day, right? So, there also is one of my favorite kind of unexpected consequences, maybe like not the right word, but like people are able to spend more time together with the people that they love. So family, friends, like the couple actually gets to sit down and chat and have like meaningful, deep conversations, or it's a way for the families to connect and bond where they wouldn't normally get to do that in a 200-person wedding because they're hosting and they're going here, there, everywhere. So the relationship and emotional and the connection piece of it was something that was unanticipated for me, and has been probably one of my favorite things to hear couples say, like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing to like be able to spend so much time with my grandma instead of just a hug and moving on. Like, we get to sit down and talk, or, so I think that answers your question.
Yeah, well, I know that's something I got really excited about because of the pandemic, this big disruption we had to how we were doing things, that it kind of woke some people up to what really mattered or what they really valued. And the number of, I've more anecdotally from friends and who've been having weddings, and the stress of having to postpone and all that stuff was hard. But then, yeah, lots of that emotional connection and still that like emotional payoff that you get of getting married in front of those you care and love is still there when it's 20 people versus 200. And that's the thing I know I personally am hoping is like a trend that carries forward of,
yes,
more people opting for that smaller option. But then if they are someone who cares about a big party, maybe you have that, but it's separate, and in a different form of what you want to see. But thinking now from an event professional, a wedding professional kind of mindset, like for those who are really focused on maintaining, having a luxury or more high-end clientele, how can you really can you, I would say, and if so, how can you have the best of both worlds when planning for these larger events as well as these smaller scale events?
Yeah, I think one of the hard things for people during the pandemic was just figuring out how to pivot and do it effectively. And for me, I found that I could not have this micro wedding brand the way that I have it and still have that be tied to my luxury brand, because they're two entirely different clients. They're looking for two entirely different things. My micro wedding clients just want to get married and they want it to be easy. They book online. I never talk to them. I meet them on their wedding day and everything is done for them. They have like 6 choices. They got to pick their cake flavor and a couple of other things, but it's like an automated process from my end, sending out the emails and the forms and the information at the various stages of the planning process. But it's simple, it's easy. People will book online at like 12:30 at night. Like I'll wake up and I'll have like a new client. It's crazy. And that is like the opposite of my rocket science client, who is involved in all of the decisions, right? Like they're the color palette, the flower choices, the flow, down to what the forks, so they're two totally different clients. But as long as you're able to show value to the client that you're talking to, you can still have those things, right? So I have a tiny micro wedding brand and I have a high production luxury brand, and it's the same me running it, right? But I just know how to market and brand each of the companies to the people that I'm talking to. And I think everybody can have a small wedding segment of their business if they want to. I think automation and ease for the consumer is a benefit that has come out of the pandemic. Like they reevaluated things. They don't want things to be hard, right? So like, how can we as event professionals make things even easier? Can we automate things for them? Can we automate things on our end so that even though it might look like we're sending emails, but it's really not us, but that they don't need in-person meetings anymore. They've got Zoom. So like the way consumers are purchasing too has changed. So just also addressing that, and every event professional, I think, can think about that.
Yeah, definitely got my wheels turning over here. It's interesting. So, I'm also curious. So, with the structure of how it sounds like you've kind of set up this partnership with vendors who you probably had before, but can you talk a little bit about how that works? Because it sounds like you're all basically coming to a space, and so that's so that you can automate it because I'm guessing the same vendors every time. So anyway, can you just talk about that, how that was set up?
Yeah. So I think one of the most fun things of this whole journey has been like working with great event professionals and doing it on a regular basis. And so for each date that we launch, we curate the vendor team. So photographer, videographer, florist, any sort of rental company, the venue, the officiant, the caterer, the cake, all of that. We handle all of that. It's one price to the customer, and we hold the contracts. And so we like to work with a lot of the same people because it's easy and it's also like it's fun. That's true. But we do like to kind of switch up the venues and sometimes the design elements of it just to make sure that like there's a good variety. But just also supporting event professionals in our community. Like the pandemic was so hard on everybody, like being able to be like, oh, hey, you can work. Like, you know what I mean? The venue is not sitting empty. Like we're booking it for the day. And so that has been really a source of like joy. And then, as we're coming out of the pandemic and people are getting more busy, some people still want to like continue to be a part of it. And some people are like, yeah, maybe like that's no longer a focus of ours anymore. And that's totally fine. There's like people email us weekly to want to be a part of it. It's just a fun concept too. And like from the event planner side of it, it's so easy. Like the days are so short. Like it's not like a normal wedding day that's 18 hours, or 20 hours. It's like, oh, we're home at 8. It's just not normal for what I was used to pre-pandemic.
Yeah. I love this idea of automation with the micro wedding process. Like, I just think it's brilliant, to be honest, because it's exhausting, like you're just saying. And so, I'm here for it.
Yeah. And that was the thing for me. It was like, okay, I can't spend a lot of time on this. Like it's gotta, for the price that the people are paying, like I can't be holding their hand through every step of the way. And so I was like, well, maybe people will want to do this and maybe they won't, but at least I'm going to try it and see. And turns out, yeah, it's great. Like people are willing to book their wedding on the internet, and it's a different consumer too. Although we have like a ton of different, like we have people who are second marriages, older, that sort of thing. But I would say the majority of our couples are younger, first marriages. So they live online anyway. So it's like, this is not a foreign way of doing things. And, you can still have a micro wedding and not do like what we do where, multiple in one day and lots of couples get married. And I think like, you just have to be smart about like, okay, how much time are you putting into it, just to make sure that you are being profitable as a business owner and not just like doing something to do it because you see a need, because, time is money. So
we talk about that so much. You've touched on a lot of themes that we talk about a lot on this podcast about, community over competition and how that's one of the cool parts of this micro weddings, that you can, pool other resources from the event community. Same thing of time is money. We hear that very, very frequently. But I think talking about profitability, like, do you have tips for event pros whose wheels are turning and ears have perked up at this idea for like maximizing their profitability?
Yeah, well, the first thing I tell people is that like I was very fortunate to start my micro wedding company during the pandemic because my other company came to a halt. So it's very hard to own multiple businesses and to get one up and running if you've already got one going full steam. So like, I think the first thing to consider is this something that you want to explore and that you actually have time to explore? And then really do your due diligence is like, is this a good use of my time and resources to explore this path? And I would say for a lot of people, it is because they aren't going away. They are here to stay. And I think we're going to see these micro weddings morph into more substantial small celebrations, so I think it is something that a lot of people can benefit from and enter into that market. And now is the right time to do it, because nobody was really there. But make sure that, okay, I'm not going to be spending all of this time and investment in creating this, and it's not going to give me as much return as profit, and so that's really, really key. And as a small business owner, when your time is limited, and your resources are limited, but I think that small weddings, like we're talking about with like this the misconceptions, they're not inexpensive, and there are people who are spending a lot of money on a small wedding, because they want to create a totally different experience. So I've been talking with, some DJs, and they're like, well, there's no dance. Like, how can I, be a part of this experience? I'm like, well, there's always a ceremony. They always need amplification. You always need, music walking down the aisle. And then also, Mary, to your point, was like, or maybe it was you, Logan, was like, have a big party later or whatever. Like, you can use your small wedding business as a funnel to other things, like maybe they will have a bigger party later, or they're going to think of you for a different event, their corporate holiday party. So there's making money from your small wedding or your small event business, but also is it also a funnel for your other businesses? I was surprised at how many people actually started coming to Rocket Science that they said that they found me through mini weddings. So it could be an interesting marketing tool as well.
Yeah, I know. The whole idea of small celebrations, honestly, I think is such a good value add, because I have a couple of friends getting married in the coming next 2 years, and it is interesting how I feel like there's a lot more intention behind it. And we talk a lot about it just in events that they're at, in weddings specifically. I think there's a lot of societal shoulds. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should invite that crazy uncle, or I should, that kind of stuff. And so I think you're seeing more couples get away from that, which I think is overall a good thing for everybody, both vendors and the actual couples and families. So I definitely hear you. And what I think a lot of folks, especially couples in a wedding scenario, aren't event folks. They don't understand how much time goes into the finished product. But doing something like that where the cost of the setup and the breakdown is spread out amongst 5 weddings or 4 weddings, however many you're doing in a day, versus that one, it really does get you get more value for your price tag, which I think is so exciting.
I find that couples are also not there. The pandemic made people prioritize their money differently. They no longer actually wanted to invest in a big wedding. They're like, why am I spending tens of thousands of dollars on this? I don't want this. Why am I getting married? Like you said, why are we doing this? We're doing this because, X, Y, and Z, and a small celebration can give them the platform to do that, and they don't need all the other things. And I think that's also going to be a shift that we see, is that people are just not going to be willing to invest what they used to in the shoulds or the traditions, they have different values and different priorities. And that's exciting for us as event professionals too, to be able to tap into that. How are we the solution to your why? How can we get you to where you need to be, through music, through floral, through, catering, food, lighting, all of those things. So it's exciting time to be a pro, as long as you made it through the pandemic.
Well, and I think one of the cool parts is, the fact that they get to work with you baked into that. That is one too. My never ending advice to friends getting married is always have an event a day of person at least, or an event planner, a wedding planner that is My argument's always they're on your side. They're advocating for you. Again, when you're not someone who works in events, you don't understand how much goes on behind the scenes to have a beautiful dinner and a DJ that plays the right music at the right time. And I have a bunch of photographer friends who lament that they often have to wear a planner hat while they're the photographer at a wedding, since they're the only vendor that's with the couple all the time and has been to a wedding before and all of that. So I think it's so great that you have it all as a one-stop shop. But just thinking about if this is someone listening and they're wanting to make this maybe a new offering, how can they spread the word in a way that targets that ideal client that we're talking about, those folks that maybe are a little bit more attached to their why?
Yeah, I think that just becomes your marketing and branding message, right? Just like talking about celebrating small, which is why I couldn't have this small wedding brand under my large wedding business. It's two competing messages. The one is like, spend a lot of money. And the other one is just like, focus on the intimate, and, they're different messages. So, I would say that you can, people are now knowing what terms to Google. So like, when the pandemic started, people did not know the term micro wedding, and now they do. So like, if you're really interested in investing and you've created a new website and you have zero organic SEO, do some Google ads, target those keywords because people are searching them. Small wedding venues in your state, micro wedding packages, elopement packages, and that's a great way to, or blog about small weddings, because then Google's going to pick that up. And I actually have a small wedding venue post on my Rocket Science page, which is an incredible funnel for my mini weddings brand. So, and then just like start really thinking about that consumer, right? Like, you got to detach it from your current consumer, most likely, and really start putting yourself in their shoes. Like, what do they value? And you can just read stuff on Gen Z, which is going to be the most of these couples, right? So like environment, like they've got student loan debt. They're not, so like who's paying for the wedding? So you can just do some of that research too. And I think that'll get you going in the right direction.
I've loved learning more about this topic today. So thank you so much. And we would love to end with some rapid fire questions. But before we get to those, is there anything that you'd like to add that we didn't cover about micro weddings?
No. I think that there's so many, there's endless opportunities, and like micro weddings are just one segment of the small wedding market too. So like you have elopements, adventure elopements, or like, destination weddings. They've kind of been doing the micro wedding thing. Destination has been kind of a micro, no one called it that, but that kind of is what it was before the pandemic. So that the small wedding umbrella has a lot of great offerings. And I hope that people listening get excited and can find a spot under that umbrella for them.
Totally. Oh, love it. Okay, so some sentence finishers. We just like to throw these in for fun at the end. So go ahead and fill in the blank. So if I had more hours in the day, I would
nap.
Oh my gosh. I love it. So speaking the truth. Okay. My favorite productivity tool is
Dubsado.
What is that?
Dubsado is our workflow management. So like it's what people book on our website, and then it sends automated emails and forms through the entire step of the process, like collects payments. It's amazing. Dubsado was not a platform that was meant for booking small weddings online, but it is a productivity tool that like one of my lighting vendors uses it too. So it just really keeps you on track and keeps all of your clients and projects organized. But yeah, Dubsado is great.
Oh, good to know. Okay. Last one, simple advice you can give to a small business owner.
Have confidence in your abilities and be honest about what you can accomplish. I wish I was reading that off a plaque or something. That was pretty great.
I know, you were like looking up when you said that. I was like, you got that written down up there?
No, but I'm going to write it down.
You should write it down.
on a handy Post-it note to the right of your computer at all times. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Gretchen. This has been really fun. We've loved talking with you. I feel like we could go on for hours and hours and hours. But if folks want to continue this conversation, where can listeners find you?
Yeah, the best place to talk about all sorts of business development stuff is culvercreative.com. You can find me on Instagram at Culver Creative, but there's nothing on there. So go to the website, and that's actually where you can book a coaching call with me. So if you're interested in learning more about small weddings or other business development, that would be the place.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gretchen. This was amazing, and we look forward to potentially having you back again as we continue to talk about microweddings.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah.
Bonus tip time, which Logan, I think you have the bonus tip today.
All right. Yes, it is bonus tip time, Mary. And this one is something that I feel like I sometimes have to learn the hard way for it to actually stick. So I'm just going to pass along some knowledge I've learned on the job is, especially when it comes to events, don't put off tasks that you could do today until like the event day. So example of this was I thought I could load some graphics that I needed and videos that I was going to load onto a computer that we would use at my in-person event. And in my head the night before, I was like, oh, I'll just do it in the morning. And then something that I kind of had forgotten was how many things just kind of come up in the moment, how many last minute speaker questions come in or things that you don't plan for that kind of eat up that time. And we started my event and I totally had wished that I'd taken some of those time to tick off some things I knew I needed to do on the event day. I should have done them really the night before. And luckily this was a multi-day event, so I got to apply that to my next day and like gift future me that extra bonus time by taking things off my plate that I need to do before the event goes live. So if you can apply this outside events, I guess, if there's anything you've been putting off that you know is just going to take a little bit of time today, just do it today and future you will thank you.
And can I just add on this bonus tip to Logan? Because I love it. I think it's awesome. And the one thing I'll also say is like set expectations with your clients too, because I've worked with some clients and they're like, it's fine, we can wait. And I'm like, that's not the process that we want to start with. Like we need to get things done much sooner because there's always going to be this last minute stuff. So that's not how we're going to do it. So just set the expectations with clients too. So thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in again for another episode. If you would like to follow us and you don't know where we are, you can find us on Instagram at Better Events Pod. Send us an email to at bettereventspod@gmail.com. And thanks so much for listening, and we will see you again on Wednesday.